Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
So again, I want to welcome you all to the session, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's presenter. So Dr. Cheryl Jackson is not only a wonderful colleague of mine, she is a great person and a great presenter, and she is the GP Strategies Organizational Design and Change Practice Lead at GP Strategies. She's an industrial organizational psychologist with over 15 years of experience designing and implementing talent management solutions across a variety of industries, specializing in job design, assessment, and engagement. We really do have a great discussion planned for you today. So with that, I am going to hand it off to you, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Kim, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. You have a million things that you could be doing with your time today, and so we're so grateful that you're sharing a little bit of your day with us. I'll try to be respectful of your time and keep us at that 30-minute mark. This is a very exciting topic. For me, I love really diving into generational differences. But our main focus today is going to be on understanding these generational differences and how they impact change management and different aspects of the organization. If you could change to the next slide for me, please, Kim. We'll take a look at our objectives. It's not moving on my end. Is it moving on everyone else's? There we go. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. So today's session is designed to really equip you with that knowledge and practical tools for managing change effectively across generations. Assuming that you have some foundation in change management, we're just going to kind of layer on some of this additional info. So we'll first explore how these different age groups view change, and then discuss the challenges in this multi-generational setting. And then finally, we'll provide some strategies that you can implement immediately within your organization to just make sure you get off the ground running. All right, so let's move into understanding generational differences. And here we go. So here are our generational numbers, if you will, and understanding these generational traits that we're going to go into really help us build better connections and bridge any potential gaps. So let's look at these individuals here. First of all, we've got our baby boomers. Our baby boomers are in that 61 to 78 year range right now, and they're making their way out of the workforce, but they really do still have a significant presence within the workforce. And those who are still working often possess significant institutional knowledge. They have watched the company and the industry and our country and our world as a whole move and change. And so they carry with them a lot of really valuable information that organizations struggle to pass down to the next generations that are taking over on their workforce. And their deep knowledge really does need to be transferred. They're experienced and they tend to value stability. They grew up in an age of greater stability in the workforce, and that's what they've come to expect within organizations. More so the previous generation, but we did see some decline with those baby boomers, but they still have that expectation. Gen X, they're 45, or shall I say, turning 45 this year. As a Gen Xer myself, don't want to put ourselves too aged too quickly, but the bottom range is 45 to 60. And likely they're in the final stages of their career. So perhaps they've changed careers and are settling in. I hate to say it that way. It sounds more like the boomers, but what I mean is many people change careers over their lifetime. And for many, when you start to enter this phase, you're settling into maybe your final career. You've maybe retired or changed a couple of careers, and you're settling in. So here we've got some Generation X, or Gen X is known for their independent and pragmatic thought, really applying sensibility and are realistic in the way that they think. rather than on theoretical considerations. So as we think through how to engage these different groups, it's just helpful to know how the different generations think. Millennials in that 81 to 96 time range. So they're not quite 30 up through 44. And then Gen Z rounding out the workforce age 13 to 28. So they've still got a gamut to run. They're digital natives and adaptable. But as we look at these, excuse me, as we look at these markers for generations, we have to be aware that not everybody is going to fall into these expectations. We know that we just like to cluster them into manageable pieces so that we can look broadly at across these generations, knowing that depending on where you fall, say you're on the cusp of one of these generations, meaning a couple of years in either direction, you may have characteristics of multiple generations. Maybe you were raised by grandparents or parents in a wider range generation apart from you. That will determine, what experiences you had growing up, or will influence what experiences that you had, and also what you bring into the workplace. So while we're going to go into this, and I think it's fascinating to look at generational characteristics, recognize that we're not saying every single person within these generations actually experience or display all of these characteristics. So I think we have a poll coming up. Kim, could you go and put that on the screen for us? So what are I'd like to know, what are the generations that we have in attendance today? I'll read this post. As a Gen Xer, I'm treating AI as something new to learn. I feel like we had to learn how to adapt and lots of change over our life. And I'm thinking this is a new adventure we're going on. What a great, great attitude, Tara. Some of us struggle a little bit more than others. It looks like you are very open to change, maybe an early adopter. I tend to go kicking and screaming. Once they get all the bugs worked out, then I'll go try that technology, but more hesitant on the front end. Okay, let's see. I think we've got a good response. We can go ahead and end that poll now. Looks like we've got a nice range here. Where are Generation X? Not so interested in this topic as perhaps, or Gen Z. Gen X, we are showing up in droves. I love that. All right, so we kind of go across the gamut here a little bit. Thank you, Kim, for that. All right. So let's take a look at generational perspectives on change. When we talk about change and change management, we really have to talk about the individuals moving through or experiencing that change. So while managing resistance and addressing personal barriers can be very individual and a personal process, as change management practitioners, we can't always identify and address every nuance of the individual. We try, but it's not always possible. So grouping people into categories can help us create action plans to provide for as many of these needs as possible, making sure that we're covering the full breadth of experiences that people are having. So generational perspectives is really a fascinating and effective approach for understanding and addressing these differences. So let's go ahead and take a look at what these various generations prefer. Most of Gen Z are probably in school right now. There are many that are in school, whether that's college all the way through potentially middle school. Feels like a wide range when you're in those younger years, though the generations, as we get older, they're equally as broad. But okay, baby boomers, they really prefer structured, gradual transitions. Let me know that we're about to have a change. Prepare me for the change, and then let's make the change over time. Don't rush me. I need time to think about it, soak it in, settle in. I can relate to this. I love to take my time and to know what's coming. And then Generation X, skeptical, but adaptable with clear communication. Let me know what's happening and I can get on board, but I need to know that you know what's going on. These are the folks that are asking the questions. And really, when we're presenting a change to teams, oftentimes they're the ones that are really asking a lot of those hard questions that make us think, did we do our due diligence? I'm often thinking of Gen X when I'm thinking, is this too much? Nope. We need to make sure that we know fully why we're doing what we're doing and we can tell them what's coming next because they're going to be expecting that from us. Millennials seek alignment with values and purpose. They really want to have this sense of connection to why are we doing this? When we talk about WIFM or what's in it for me, we're often speaking to those millennials who want to know that this is going to add value to their life, to their job, that it's going to make the company better. If that company is in alignment with what they're really focused on and wanting to do. So we need to make sure that they have a solid connection with the change itself. Other generations may say, okay, explain to me why this is important, where millennials say, why is it important to me? I want to know that this is going to be value add for me. And Gen Z tends to thrive in dynamic, tech-driven environments. Got it. Let's move on. You want us to change. We got it. You want me to do something different? Got it. Let's just make it happen. Let's not drag this out, people. I can just hear them saying that. I teach some classes at Texas A&M, and I can just hear my students when I go and over explain and trying to help them understand why we're doing it this way. And they're like, got it. Just tell me what's next and what I need to do. It's not that hard. Just make it happen. Okay, okay. I've got that. So these are the different audiences. Then we're thinking about who we're speaking to, how we're driving change forward. We may be in one generation and want it to look a certain way, but we've got to remember that there's so many other groups out there that are not going to be as responsive if we just do it our way, or if we're leaving out a valuable group that maybe are going to come back and ask, you didn't even explain to me why we're doing this. I don't feel any connected to it, and that can kind of drive down the energy of the change. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here, looking at common challenges for each of these generations. Now, this is going to be a heavy worded slide, so go ahead and change to the next one, Kim, if you would. I won't read it all to you, but I just think there's too much fun stuff to not put into a slide. So when we think about challenges, resistance to change is a big one when we think about change. Everyone has resistance. Even if it's a small change, you think this isn't that big of a deal, we're going to be managing those internal challenges that folks face, and that is resistance. And each one of these generations is going to handle that slightly different. So baby boomers may resist due to a preference for stability. I just don't want it to be different. Gen X seeks clarity and practical benefits before they're embracing it. I need to know all of this before I can get over my personal hurdles. I'm asking the questions. I'm doing my due diligence. Millennials and Gen Z are generally more open, but may become frustrated by slow transitions or lack of purpose. Communication breakdowns. Number 2, communication, huge part of change management. Some people think that's all that change management is, but it's so much more than that. But communicating is really, really important to do it effectively. Baby boomers really favor this direct face-to-face communication. We like town hall, not we. As a change practitioner, we like to put town halls together, have personal meetings, make sure there's a one-on-one aspect of change so that our leaders can get in front of their team members and make sure that they're getting the information they need, especially for those that really thrive on that face-to-face communication. And that can be tough in a hybrid environment. So as leaders, we're making sure to incorporate all of those skills necessary to adapt to your full workforce. Gen X appreciates concise, no nonsense messaging. Just get to the point. I don't know about you, but if you've ever read an email that starts with, hello, how are you doing? How was your weekend? I'm like, get to the point. I know that's not why you're asking me this. I often come back at the bottom and say, oh, by the way, how was your weekend? How are you doing? So there is a balance there. If you find yourself maybe leaning toward a more practical approach, you really need to to make sure that you're considering your audience. Millennials prefer collaborative and digital communication tools, and Gen Z thrives on real-time tech-enabled interactions. Those are the notifications and the alerts and the highlights. They thrive on having digital capabilities ready at their fingertips, and that space is really beginning to explode. Leadership expectations and gaps. Baby boomers expect more hierarchical, experience-based leadership, really valuing the experience that their leaders bring to the table. Gen Z, autonomy and results-driven leadership. Millennials want, again, that inspirational, empathetic leadership that aligns to their values. And then Gen Z wants those leaders who are transparent, inclusive, and tech-savvy. Now, technology adoption disparities, this is probably where we see how we start to really think of those younger generations. And I don't know about you, but it feels like the generation below me are just babies. They're so little. I think of them as kids. You know, when I started learning about generations, they were younger than me. So many of us often, I hear a lot, the poor millennials get such a bad rap because they're often seen as those teenagers on the couch with the iPads, and those generations that didn't grow up with it just didn't understand it. So they often still get labeled as those kids that are just watching their tablets, and that's not the case. As we saw earlier, they are approaching middle age and have children, grown children in many cases of their own. And so we often pile on technological differences to the generations, and that probably is the biggest thing we've experienced. But this can apply to anyone. So baby boomers still may struggle with adopting to new technology. Gen X is adaptable but cautious. We saw that in the message. And millennials and Gen Z are more quick adopters, but overlook the need for a thorough training of others. And that's a big one that we see in the workforce quite a bit, is they're like, why do we need the training? It's so easy, just pick up on it, not recognizing that not everybody grew up with this technology, and struggle more and need that training. So especially our millennial and Gen Z practitioners, don't forget that everybody has a different pace. I see proud Gen Xer in the room. So let me know, is this resonating with you? Put a 1 in the comments if this is resonating, 2 if it's iffy, 3 if you're making no connection whatsoever. Love the ones. Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so let's start moving into, excuse me, into strategies. What do we do about it now that we have this knowledge? What do we do with it? So our first strategy here is around inclusive leadership. A lot of words on the slide here, a little bit about what is inclusive leadership. But what I want you to get out of it here is, as leaders, practitioners, we want to make sure we're having dialogue. Encouraging dialogue across the generations. This is how we get knowledge transfer, how we gain understanding of one another, how we give each other grace when we know people a little bit better. And it's really hard when we are hybrid, but this is something we need to encourage in as many different ways as possible. So the open dialogue, adapting approaches, and promoting participation in decision making. We need everyone in the room to speak up. We can all learn from each other, and we're all bringing different thought processes to the table. So as leaders and practitioners, we need to provide ways for people to provide their input, calling on folks, having a popcorn game, making sure that we do a roundtable discussion or have opportunities for dialogue and feedback outside of the meeting room or the meeting space that we're in at the moment. How do we make sure that all generations feel that they have their voice heard and are encouraged to speak out? Okay, strategy number 2, customized communication. This is a really big one and a really hard one. You can only write so many emails. Everyone doesn't get their own email, but how do we capture the various needs how do we capture the various needs without feeling like we're having 900 different email messages? Well, we're not having 900 different email messages. We're using a mix of methodologies. So digital and in-person methods. So I mentioned a town hall and one-on-one conversations, daily stand-ups, team meetings, these face-to-face methods that you can have mixed in with any type of digital notification, whether it's in a system, email communications, video messaging. How do people like to receive messages? Do you have a communication board that people are checking regularly, a Slack channel, a Teams channel? Foster transparency and two-way feedback, especially for those Xers that really want to know that you know your stuff. You've got to be transparent, sharing information back and forth, and this two-way feedback. If we're not getting the message across to a group, we want to know that. So having a feedback loop in any type of change initiative is imperative to make sure that you're hearing what you need to hear and ask for it. Where we work with clients all the time that we say, has there been any feedback? No, no, no. We get them in the room, have a conversation with them, and the feedback just comes pouring in. And they weren't asking for the feedback, they just thought it would come. Well, it's not going to just come in. You have to ask for it, ask different types of questions to get the feedback that you need to make sure your message is being heard. And then tailor messaging to resonate with each group. So as we're looking at stakeholders, defining the various characteristics of those stakeholders are going to help you understand what you need to put in your messaging. What are their fears, their doubts, their hesitations, their resistance, barriers, change, and begin to address those, whether they're in talking points, FAQs, video messaging, in the top part of your email. This is your opportunity to hear what their needs are and address those needs. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next strategy is change agility. This is one of my favorite things about change management is helping organizations prepare for the change long before the change ever happens. And these types of conversations are so powerful because they're helping us build up a knowledge base of our workforce, so that when we do have quick changes or important changes that are coming, we already know how to communicate best, how to get the messages across, the concerns, the difficulties of our workforce. So number one here is building leadership capability around change management. Do our leaders know what their role is? Do they know that they actually have to do something when we are communicating an initiative? Many of them want to ride along and say, you got messages from them. You have questions, look at the last email you got. It's really important for leaders to drive that change, both from a sharing of communication standpoint, but also from leading by example, leading those behaviors. And as we fall into the different generational groups that we talked about before, we cannot, as practitioners, get to everybody. We're dependent on our leaders to be able to know their audience and address those audiences accordingly. So helping them move along in their change journey in those one-on-one conversations, team meetings, etc. Upskilling employees on adaptability and resilience. So giving them the skills they need to recognize their own resistance, understand their own challenges, and ask for what they need. Again, we often think that everybody thinks the way we do, has the same challenges that we do, and so they're automatically going to address our challenges. They're going to know that I need to know, why are we doing this, and what are did you do your due diligence, and have you thought through everything? They're just going to tell me. Well, they assume that they're the expert and they don't need to be questioned. And so why would they tell us why they did it? So those are some of those, generations butting up against each other. And if we just spoke to one another, we could break that down and everyone would get the information they need and be able to address our own personal challenges and resistance. Implementing intergenerational mentoring programs. This is one that I absolutely love to help get the generations talking with one another and understand a bit more about each other. The more distance there is between us when we're not really engaging or speaking, we can create our own stereotypes and our own expectations about who they are and what they like to do. And they just don't like to work hard like we did anymore. When in reality, they're working differently. How can we understand how they're working differently so that we can bring each other along? Oh my goodness. Ensure policies and procedures support change agility. We are flat out of time. Okay, and on the next strategy, celebrate diversity. Celebrate opportunities for storytelling. Get different generations in front of everyone and highlight special moments or successes that they've had. Recognizing the unique strengths of each generation and promoting that cross-generational collaboration. How do we get them talking and working together? So we've got a quick case study here. We were working with a mid-sized financial service company where they were really challenged to adopt a new CRM. And the workforce included, of course, the wide range of generations, but they were and some of the generations were feeling frustrated by this slow adoption. So we came in and implemented a peer-to-peer mentoring program where the different generations can support each other. So millennials and Gen Z were partnered with baby boomers and Gen X colleagues to provide a little more personalized support, help them understand the challenges. We had customized training sessions were offered to address the different in different ways to address their different concerns. So we had hands-on workshops, integration guides, vision sharing sessions. But the important thing to know is here that baby boomers were not the only ones that could go to the hands-on workshop. Gen Z were not the only ones that could attend the vision sharing sessions. Everyone could attend the different sessions. In fact, it was highly encouraged to attend all of the different types of sessions to experience different ways of addressing the unique needs. So within 6 months, the CRM adoption rates increased by 45%, cross-generational collaboration improved, and employee satisfaction scores related to technology use rose by 30%. So really positive ways that you can incorporate different methods to engage your workforce at all levels and make sure they're getting the support that they need. Takeaways and next steps here, set up cross-generational lunch or coffee chats. Run a quick survey to really understand the needs and the preferences and who you've got in your workforce. Build cross-generational teams when possible. I love the weekly emails spotlighting generational strengths and highlighting how employees from different generations contribute. And then how can you maybe pilot an intergenerational buddy system, pairing team members from different generations? That's it for me. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Kim, see if we had any questions or if we have time for any.
Hi, Cheryl, great presentation. We are at time, we're over time. But there were some questions, Cheryl, but I think what we'll do is we'll just follow up with those people directly and answer the questions for right now. But again, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. I thank you for your time and attention. Cheryl, for the great discussion and presentation. You're a superstar. And everybody, be sure to visit gpstrategies.com/webinar to join our upcoming webinar sessions. Again, I want to thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you so much.
Especially you.
Glad I could be here.
All right. Take care, everyone, and thank you again.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.